We're going to call this pattern the Grouse for a very particular reason. It's tied up with grouse. I've got a size 14 just regular dry fly hook here in my vise. I'm just starting out with some black thread. Get a thread base started. And I'll go ahead and take that thread on back to the bend of the hook. I'm just turning to one of the feathers from the grouse. I believe this is a ruffed grouse. For the first time in like 35 years, my son and I went out hunting grouse, and we actually got one. And so I decided to go ahead and tie up a pattern made out of the feathers. So I'm going to measure these fibers about the length of the shank of the hook. I'm just making this into a nice basic soft tackle pattern. So I'll get a wrap down on that tail. We'll wrap back on it, making sure it stays on the center top. Just about like that. And I'm going to move forward just to help me keep a kind of a steady body width, thickness. I'm going to go ahead and tie this forward with those fibers still kind of in place. And once I get up to the front, we'll just come on in with our scissors and trim those off. And then I'll just clean up the butt ends. I'm going to rib the fly with a piece of copper wire. This is small copper. I'm going to get that secured in place. Then I'll kind of look at the length, pull that back until it gets to the length I want it. I want to tie that on the lens side of the hook, so on the far side of me. I'm just going to secure that on back. So for the dubbing, I'm going to turn again to one of these grouse feathers. And most of these feathers, just like the partridge, have this nice fluffy under feather. You can kind of see it there. Usually I strip that off. I'm actually stripping fibers off of that, and I'm going to use that for my dubbing, which gives us a kind of a nice fluffy gray dubbing. You may end up trimming it a little bit as the fibers kind of stick out a little as you tie it in. I'm going to work on getting it as tight as I can. And bring my thread on back. Get that first wrap right around the back. And if it escapes like you, because it's not your usual dubbing material, just bring it back and twist it back on. And if it does that, just go ahead and leave it. We'll come back out and trim some of that out. I'm going to want to leave at least 2 to 3 eye lengths behind the hook eye. So I've got enough there. I'm going to just go ahead and pull the rest of that off. Take a few wraps to kind of secure that down. Then I'm just going to come in with my scissors and trim this back. Turn my vise around to just kind of get a look at it. Just giving it a little haircut. Once you've got that kind of trim to your liking, then you'll just grab your copper wire. I'm going to just kind of take open wire wraps here. You'll notice how that kind of puffy feather sticks up through those wire wraps really nicely, and it's going to move really well in the water. Bring that right up to the front. Take a wrap or two over the top of that. Pull it back and take a wrap or two. And we're just going to helicopter that right off. Just pull on it, twist it back and forth, and it'll break off. So for our soft hackle, again, I'm turning to a grouse feather. So all of this, the body, tails, and our soft hackle are all going to be off of the same grouse. I'm going to kind of grab that by the tip and stroke some of these fibers back. I'm going to just hold that tip kind of in place just like that, and we're going to cut just a bit off of it. So we just have a nice triangle for our tie-in point. So with those fibers still kind of swept backwards, we're just going to take this, we're going to tie in right by our tying point. Get rid of some of these things that are sticking all over. Get a couple of good solid wraps on that, then I'm going to start wrapping forward fairly tightly just to make sure I get that secured in place. I'm going to come in with my scissors, grab my hackle pliers and put that stem in my hackle pliers. And we're just going to stand this up, work on folding these fibers backwards. You can nudge that with your finger if you need to. So I'm coming around on that first turn. As I come up, I'm going to stroke everything back again. And these turns are going to be just one right in front of the last one. Now that I'm on the bare stem, I'm going to take a wrap over the top of it. I can release it from my pliers now. Pull it back just a little bit. Get a couple of wraps in front of it as well. I'm just going to turn my vise and get right at that stem, cut it off right against the thread. Take this one that's escaped, I'll just pull that right off. I'm just going to stroke everything back. We're going to start taking wraps back into those fibers. About like that. We'll go ahead and clean this up just a little bit, taking some turns back to the behind the eye. Give myself just a little bit of extra thread here, and we'll grab our whip finisher. I'm going to start taking wraps moving back into where the soft hackle is. and release that, make sure it's seated well, and we'll come in with our thread cutter. And there is the grouse. Fly tied completely out of grouse feathers. We added some copper wire for ribbing, but other than that, this is just straight up grouse. Haven't fished it because I just kind of winged it here, pardon the pun. But that soft tackle is going to capture air. We're going to have nice movement from the dubbing that we used with the feather. We'll get a lot more movement, maybe some gill look. Grab yourself a hook, throw it in your vise, and give this one a shot.